Everyday people.
I told him I had to work and tried to brush past him, but he shifted his body so I couldn't pass him without either spilling my drink or ducking under his arm.
Real stories.
He just stood there, looking inside, waiting.
Moments that should never have happened.
Because the man who had been sitting in the car across from me was no longer there. Instead, he was standing right next to my driver's side door.
You're listening to Terror, presented by Survival Horror Ambience.
I worked the overnight shift at a gas station just off the highway. I've been there about 8 months now. It's pretty quiet after midnight. Most of the customers are truck drivers, rideshare drivers, or someone stopping in for cigarettes before heading home. But after about 2 in the morning, the place usually goes completely dead. You start noticing things when it gets that quiet. The refrigerator's humming, the fluorescent lights buzzing. Every little sound feels louder than it should. I got used to that silence. But there was one night where it didn't feel normal. It was a Wednesday, around 2:10 a.m., and a dark sedan pulled up to pump 3. I noticed it right away because I hadn't seen a car in almost 40 minutes. The car stopped, but the driver didn't get out. The engine just kept running. At first, I didn't think much of it. People sit in their car sometimes. But 5 minutes passed, then 10, and the headlights were pointed directly at the store windows, at me. Then the headlights shut off, but the engine kept running. That's when I started feeling a little uneasy. After about 20 minutes, the driver finally opened the door and stepped out. He looked normal, maybe mid-30s, dark hoodie, jeans, nothing strange about him. Except he didn't walk to the pump. He didn't even look at it. He just stood there, next to his car, staring straight at the store. At me. I tried to act like I didn't notice, pretending to organize things behind the counter. But I could feel it, like he was watching the building. After about a minute, he started walking toward the entrance. He came inside, walked straight up to the counter, didn't grab a drink, didn't look around, didn't even check his phone. He just stood there. So I did the normal thing. I said, "Hey, how's it going?" So he didn't answer. He just stared at me, completely blank expression. Then he asked me one question. "What time do you get off?" Something about the way he said it made my stomach drop. I told him 6. My shift actually ends at 5, but I lied. He nodded slowly, like he was memorizing it. Then he asked, "You here by yourself?" I said no. Told him my coworker was in the back doing inventory. Another lie. Pause. He didn't say anything after that. Didn't buy anything. Didn't even say goodbye. He just turned around and walked out. But he didn't leave. He got back in his car and sat there. Engine running. 15 minutes passed. Then 30. I kept checking the security monitor behind the counter, waiting to see brake lights, waiting for him to leave. But around 3 a.m., the car moved. And for a second, I thought, okay, he's finally going. But instead, he pulled forward and parked right in front of the entrance. Then he turned the engine off. That's when I locked the door. We're technically not supposed to lock it overnight, but something in my gut was telling me this wasn't right. A few minutes later, he stepped out again, walked up to the door, pulled the handle. It didn't open. He looked up at me through the glass, and he smiled. Not angry, not friendly, just calm, like he expected it to be locked. He tried the handle again, slowly, then leaned sideways to look further into the store. I picked up the phone and pretended I was already on a call. He watched me for a few seconds, then walked back to his car. But he didn't leave. He just sat there. The parking lot was empty. The highway was quiet. It honestly felt like the whole world had shrunk down to just me and him. So I called the non-emergency police line, told them there was a guy sitting outside who'd been there almost an hour. and that he asked what time I got off work. While I was on the phone, I saw his brake lights turn on. My heart jumped. I thought he was finally leaving, but instead he pulled forward and parked right in the front of the entrance. Then he turned the engine off. That's when I started to panic. There's a blind spot along that wall near the dumpsters. The security camera doesn't cover the whole thing, and the employee door is back there. I kept staring at the monitor, waiting to see him walk past the camera. The dispatcher told me officers were on the way. Then I saw movement. He stepped back into view, walking slowly toward the front again. This time, he didn't touch the door. He just stood there, looking inside, waiting. Then police lights flashed across the parking lot. The second he saw them, he got back in his car and drove away before they even pulled in. They took my statement, checked the cameras, but since he never threatened me, there wasn't much they could do. He didn't come back the next night, or the night after that. But about 2 weeks later, I was checking the cameras during another quiet shift, and I saw a dark sedan drive slowly past the station. It didn't turn in, didn't slow down much, but when it passed under the streetlight, I saw the driver's face. It was him. He wasn't looking at the road. He wasn't looking at the pumps. He was looking directly at the store windows. And even though he kept driving that night, I still work the overnight shift. And every time a car pulls into pump 3 after 2 a.m., I wonder if it's him. And if one night he's going to come back, and this time, not leave.
I seem to be a magnet for weird or creepy encounters. If I really sat down and thought about it, I could probably write a whole book about them. But this one happened when I was around 19 or 20, during a time in my life when, honestly, everything felt like it was falling apart. My life was a mess, and I was under a lot of pressure. One of the only places that felt calm to me back then was a used bookstore I'd been going to since I was a kid. It was in a strip mall, nothing fancy, but it had this trade-in system where you could exchange books for store credit. Because of that, I hadn't actually paid for a book in years. Across the parking lot from the bookstore, there was a 7-Eleven, and whenever I visited, I'd usually stop there first to grab a soda and sometimes cigarettes. The bookstore employees didn't care if I brought a drink inside, so it became part of my little routine. On this particular day, I went into the 7-Eleven like normal. There were 2 men working there, probably both in their 40s. At first, it just seemed like they were casually looking at me, but after a minute, it became obvious they were checking me out. Then they started making comments. When I went up to buy my cigarettes, the cashier checked my ID and suddenly said, "Wow, you're 20? I thought you were way younger." Then he looked over at the other employee and said, "Doesn't she look younger?" The other guy agreed immediately. It was just such a strange thing to say out loud. I remember feeling uncomfortable, but I brushed it off and left the store. Originally, I wanted to sit at the Starbucks across the street, but when I walked over there, there wasn't any seating available. So I ended up lighting a cigarette outside the 7-Eleven instead. That's when the cashier decided it was apparently his break time, because he came outside to smoke too. I tried to act casual, like I wasn't creeped out, but my guard was definitely up. So after a minute, I wandered back over to the bookstore to put some distance between us. I spent a while inside the bookstore browsing. Eventually, I left with a small stack of books. But when I stepped back into the parking lot, I realized something embarrassing. I had no idea where I parked. I swear I could lose my car in an empty field. So I started wandering through the parking lot trying to spot it. At one point, I stepped between 2 trucks, and completely out of nowhere, the 7-Eleven employee stepped directly in front of me. Like he had been waiting. He said I needed to come back into the store. I told him I had to work and tried to brush past him, but he shifted his body so I couldn't pass him without either spilling my drink or ducking under his arm. Then he said something that immediately made my stomach drop. He said the cashier really needed my number and that they were going to a party at 5 p.m. He said I could come to the back of the store and drink with them until they left. It was around 4:30 at the time. I told him again that I had to work and tried to move around him, but every time I moved, he moved too.
He even stepped forward a few times so there was less space between the cars. I'm a pretty small person, so eventually I started backing up and tried to squeeze between other parked cars. This weird standoff lasted a couple minutes. Finally, I decided the safest move was to walk back into the store. At least there were cameras inside. When I walked in, something strange happened. 2 police officers were walking out the door at the exact same moment. I remember wanting to stop them, but they were already moving too fast for me to say anything. Looking back, I probably could have just yelled something, but at the time, my brain didn't even think of it. And honestly, I've had such bad luck with cops in the past that part of me wasn't even sure that would help. By the time I was fully back inside the 7-Eleven, things got even weirder. They had already picked out a mini bottle of liquor for me. The cashier started talking excitedly about this party they were supposedly having. A party on a Wednesday at 5 p.m. He kept saying how amazing it was going to be. There would be alcohol, there would be substances, and I was going to have so much fun. I knew immediately there was no party. So I just stood there nodding and saying things like, uh-huh, yeah, okay. Eventually, the cashier finally got to the point. He started demanding my phone number. At the same time, the other employee slowly moved toward the door. Now I was trapped in a 7-Eleven with 2 creepy guys, holding nothing but a soda and a bag of books. So I made a quick decision. I gave them a fake number. One with 555 in the middle, like the fake phone numbers they use in movies. They kept trying to get me to go to the back of the store with them, but I told them I had to work and that maybe I'd come to the next party. I was just trying to placate them long enough to leave. Eventually, it seemed like they were satisfied. They let me walk out, but I knew they were going to watch me, and I absolutely did not want them seeing which car was mine. So instead of going to my car, I walked calmly into another nearby store. The second I got inside, I pulled out my phone and called the dad of the kids I was supposed to nanny for. The moment he answered, I completely broke down. I was shaking and crying and trying to explain what was happening. His wife was at work, so he was the only person who could help me get out of there quickly. A few minutes later, he pulled up in front of the store. The second his car stopped, I ran outside and jumped in. As we drove away, I caught a quick glimpse of one of the employees standing inside the 7-Eleven, looking out the window. I don't think he saw me leave. We didn't go back for my car until later that night. Over the years, friends have suggested all kinds of theories about what those guys might have wanted. Some people think it might have been trafficking. Others think maybe they were trying to kidnap me. Or maybe they just wanted to trap me in the store. I honestly don't know. But whatever their plan was, it definitely wasn't good. The only part of the story that still makes me laugh a little happened when I first got into the nanny dad's car. I noticed there was a hammer sitting on the seat next to him, so I asked if he was planning on attacking those guys, and he just shrugged and said, "You never know when you might need a hammer." I was on a long road trip by myself and stopped at a quiet gas station around 10 p.m. It was the kind of stop you make when you've been driving for hours and everything starts to blur together. The road was mostly empty, and the only lights around were the ones hanging over the gas pumps in the small convenience store. When I pulled in, there were only a couple pumps open. Not long after I got out of my car, a man in a clean, plain car pulled into the pump directly across from me. At first, nothing seemed strange, but the moment his car stopped, I noticed something odd. He didn't get out. He just sat there, staring straight ahead through the windshield, not looking at his phone, not reaching for the pump, just staring. I remember glancing over at him once or twice while my tank was filling. Every time I looked, he was in the exact same position, hands on the wheel, head facing forward, completely still. After a minute or so, I shrugged it off and walked inside the store to pay. The place was quiet, one employee behind the counter and the hum of the refrigerators along the back wall. I paid for the gas and grabbed a drink before heading back outside. But the second I stepped out of the door, I felt my stomach tighten, because the man who had been sitting in the car across from me was no longer there. Instead, he was standing right next to my driver's side door. Not near his pump, not near the store, my door. For a moment, I just froze. He didn't look aggressive or anything, just calm, almost casual, but the way he was standing there felt wrong, like he had been waiting for me to come back out. Then he spoke. "Long drive, huh?" His voice was normal enough, but it still caught me off guard. I gave a small nod and said something like, "Yeah, something like that." Then he asked, "You take the I-90? That made me pause. I hadn't told anyone where I was going. I hadn't even spoken to anyone at the gas station yet. Before I could respond, he continued, "That stretch after the river, it's real dark out there. No lights." He looked right at me. "You should be careful." The way he said it made my skin crawl, because he wasn't guessing. He described the exact route I was taking, the same highway, the same stretch road, and I had never mentioned it to him or to anyone else. I didn't know what to say, so I just muttered, "Thanks." Then I unlocked my car and got inside as quickly as I could without making it obvious. The second the door shut, I locked it immediately. My hands were already on the steering wheel when I looked up. He was still standing there, watching me, not saying anything else, just staring. I pulled out of the gas station and got back onto the highway. In my rearview mirror, I could still see him standing near the pumps, following my car with his eyes as I drove away. I stayed on the road for a few minutes, but the longer I drove, the more uneasy I felt thinking about what he said, about that dark stretch of road, about how he knew exactly where I was going. So instead of continuing on the highway, I took the very next exit and found a completely different route. It added time to my trip, but I didn't care. Maybe the guy was just trying to be friendly, maybe it was nothing, but something about the way he was waiting by my door and the way he knew my route made me feel like getting off that highway was the smartest decision I could make. And to this day, I still wonder how he knew.
Some stories are strange, some are disturbing, and some stay with you long after you hear them. If you enjoyed tonight's stories, make sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes of Terrora. And if you've ever experienced something unsettling of your own, feel free to share it. Your story might appear in a future episode. Until next time, this is Terrora, brought to you by Survival Horror Ambience. Sleep well.